Hello and welcome back to my channel. I'm Savannah J. Goins, author of Young Adult Fantasy, and today I'm going to talk about how to make unique characters. So when I first started writing The Gwythinian a few years ago, I knew nothing about character development. I was not someone who was strong in my understanding of characters. I knew nothing about my characters, and I had no idea what I needed to know or how to find it out or make it up. So I did a lot of reading on it. I'm going to list some resources below and give you some tips for how I was able to figure out how to make stronger characters. First of all, I worried a lot that I was going to write a character that was exactly like me, and especially with my protagonist. And she has some different struggles than what I've had. I've not had to deal with all the struggles that she has had to deal with, and she is not some kind of expression of my inner self or anything like that, but I relate to her with some things, and at the same time, though, there's a whole lot about her that's different than me. And when I was first writing, I didn't know how to do that. I was afraid that all my characters were going to end up being exactly like me. But the thing is, if you are making up the characters, they're all going to have a little bit of a piece of you. I mean, you can only make up characters that you have you've seen characteristics of these characters in other people, or you've experienced these things in some way yourself, even if it's not a characteristic of yourself. So it's perfectly normal for characters to have bits of you in them. They're going to have a lot of other things about them that are going to make them a lot different from you anyway. So don't worry about your character being exactly like you. As you think about ways that you can make them stronger characters, you'll probably be growing them into exactly who they need to be in order to get the message across that you want to get across, and in order to just make a stronger story and help move the plot forward. So one of the first things that I'll do if I somewhat have a vague idea of what I want a character to be like, I'll try to think of another character that I know from another story that's similar, and then I can look at that character and decide what traits they have that I do want my character to have, and what traits they have that I don't want my character to have, and then what traits that I would exchange those for. And I can kind of start with kind of a template in a way of another character and keep what I like and throw what I don't like for that character. So I didn't really know about that when I was writing the Gwythinian, and I don't necessarily always use this method, but as I was writing the character that has come to be my absolute #1 favorite character in the whole series, I did use this method for him. So in the Cruvibanian, the second book, the main Cruvibanian that we'll meet is Verita Meek, also called Very, who is one of the Cruvibanian characters. They're based off sugar gliders. They're kind of like overgrown giant sugar gliders. And he's really cute, but he's also a little bit fierce. But anyway, I mainly thought of him as being someone who was going to be helpful and friendly, but also not not in a pushover-ish way. So I kind of thought of Chuck from The Maze Runner, and I actually realized that he was a lot like Chuck. So I thought about some of the traits that Chuck had and what did go with Very and then what didn't. And he's basically kind of an annoying little brother character in a way. He's a little bit obnoxious, but he's also very endearing, even sometimes because of his obnoxiousness. And even though he's annoying at times, he's also someone who would do anything to fight and save you, and keep the people important to him safe. And he's just a really awesome character. He's very witty and fun to write, and I hope you enjoy reading about him when the Cruvibanian comes out. But yeah, just kind of basing him a little bit off of a character that I already was familiar with, and being able to take and leave the characteristics that I wanted was just a really great way to kind of develop his character in the beginning. Another really important thing for developing characters is the dialogue, how they talk. So this is especially important if you're writing in first person, whether past or present, because if you're writing in first person, the entire book is in your character's voice. And if you're writing in two different perspectives or multiple different perspectives throughout, like in different chapters, it's going to be even more important that they talk differently. Like, for example, in the Gwythinian, when I first wrote it, I used a ton of very formal words, very big words that I would use in writing like papers for school where I was trying to sound scientific and stuff like that. Like I would use a lot of big words from a big vocabulary that a 17-year-old in high school would probably not use. Some 17-year-olds in high school might, a really smart character, epically nerdy character maybe, but she was neither of those kinds of characters. So for her to use that kind of giant vocabulary even not when she was talking, even just as she's thinking and I'm showing, her thoughts and the whole story through her eyes, I had to take those words out because they were just not accurate for her at all. So an example of this, even with third person limited, when you're telling the story in third person but only in one person's perspective at a time, that also is somewhat important to their voice, but to a lesser degree than with first person. So a great example of this is Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. I love that book. It's a fantastic book. She uses the nuances of the way that people talk in a a great way that really works. So as you're reading the book from 5 different perspectives, if you're coming into it in the middle of a chapter, you immediately know who's talking. There's characters that are more educated, less educated, more street smart but poor, or more poor and not educated. There's a whole lot of little nuances that make it really obvious whose perspective it's in, even though it's in third person. Even more like blatantly apparent is the dialogue, the way that each character talks, the way they actually say things out loud. This is the first time I actually ever noticed this before, but she did her dialogue without tags at all in some places. So a dialogue tag is when you say, I ate an apple, said Pam. Said Pam is a dialogue tag. It'd be better for Pam to, flick a hair out of her face and then say that she ate an apple, just to show us that it's Pam that's talking, but without telling us that Pam is talking, because we already know she's talking. We already know she's doing that because there's quotation marks and something is said. So we don't need to use dialogue tags too often. You can use them a little bit, but using them too much looks unattractive to the eye and doesn't sound nice when you're reading it or hearing it. And just using action tags or using no tags, if it works, is even better. So I noticed that Leigh Bardugo used a lot of action tags instead of dialogue tags, and also had long conversations that went on for several lines between multiple characters, not just 2, and I still had no trouble guessing who was talking, or no trouble following who was saying what, because it was so clear by their word choice which person was talking. And that was just such a neat thing to see that I had never really noticed before. So if you haven't read Six of Crows yet, or if you already have read it, maybe just flip to it if you have it and look, or even you can look up the sample in Amazon. I don't know how much of it is in there, but if you're able to look up the sample in Amazon, you might be able to see some of that. I don't know for sure if that shows up in that section, but you can try and check that out just to see it. It's a really, really great way to show rather than tell, and to not be repetitive. So another thing that kind of goes along with that is mannerisms. So mannerisms are things characters do, like, brushing their hair away from their face, thinking by putting their hand on their chin, or, narrowing their eyes, or, scratching their ear, any kind of thing that people do that is kind of something that you only see that person do. Those are mannerisms. As an example, if you have ever read Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn series, the Prince character balls his hands into fists whenever he's talking to his father and he's really afraid of him and frustrated with him. Whenever he's scared and mad, he balls his hands into fists at his side. And as the series goes on, he continues to do that with other people. Whenever he's feeling uncomfortable or stressed, he balls his hands into fists. And Brandon shows us that in a way that really works, that keeps us from having to be told that he's stressed. We can guess from the context that he's stressed, and then we can see him balling up his hands and know that he's stressed. And he also gets rebuked for that. One of his advisors tells him, you've got to stop balling up your hands whenever you're mad, because you're letting your enemies know what frustrates you. Like even if you have a poker face, if you're balling up your hands into fists, they can tell that they're getting to you. So even him having that mannerism and then being reprimanded for it is really important in his growth. Us seeing him do that and then eventually work through not doing that anymore, stopping that habit, is a really great way to show his growth to us, and something that I really appreciated seeing. So some great resources for this. Plot versus Character by Jeff Gerke was really, really helpful to me. My editor recommended it to me when I was working on the Gwythinian, and it really helped me a lot my character development was really rough in the beginning, and it improved a lot with the help of that book. So I definitely recommend that. I'm linking to it below. Another thing is K.M. Weiland's resources. She has lots of great resources on character development and lots of other things. But I'll link to her character development posts below. And if you have any other tips for how to make your characters unique, please share those in the comments. I would love to hear them. And if you liked this writing tip video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more of my writing tips videos, please hit the subscribe button. And to be notified whenever I post on Mondays, you can hit the bell icon. And I will see you guys next time. Until then, have fun making words happen.